For this example of a piecewise function, we're going to be using f of x is equal to 3x minus 3, comma, x is greater than 5. Negative x to the third plus 3, comma, negative 2 is less than or equal to x, and x is less than or equal to 5. 10 plus 2x to the second, comma, x is less than negative 2. So the first thing we need to look at in a piecewise function is what are the x values that we need to plug in. So our first x value that we want to plug in is negative 10. How do we figure out which equation of the piecewise function, or which piece we want to use, is determined by the inequalities on the right. So what we need to do is plug in negative 10 as the x on the inequalities on the right, and whichever inequality makes negative 10 true as x, we're going to use the equation associated with that inequality. So the first one we have negative 10 is not greater than 5, so we're not going to use the first equation. Negative 10 is less than or equal, is not less than or equal to negative 2, so we won't use the second equation. And negative 10 is less than negative 2, so we're going to use the last equation. So plugging in negative 10 as our x in the last equation, we get 10 plus 2 times negative 10 to the second. And now we're going to solve for our y value. So first we're going to do 2 times negative 10 to the second, which is negative 10 times negative 10. So we get 10 plus 2 times 100. Then 2 times 100 equals 200. And then adding 10 to 200, we get 210. And then with our y value that we now have, 210, we're going to plug in 210 as our y value in our ordered pair, and negative 10 into our ordered pair as the x. And then we have our final solution as an ordered pair, negative 10, comma 210. Then looking at our next x value, we have negative 4.5. Negative 4.5 is not greater than 5, so we won't use the first equation. Negative 4.5 is not greater than or equal to negative 2, so we won't use that equation, the second one. And again, we're going to be using the third equation because negative 2 is negative 4.5 is less than negative 2. Plugging in negative 4.5 as the x, we get 10 plus 2 times negative 4.5 to the second. Negative 4.5 to the second is 9, and then 2 times 9 equals 18, and 10 plus 18 equals 28. And again, we plug in both our x value, negative 4.5, and our y value, 28, into our ordered pair to get negative 4.5, comma 28 as our final solution for that x value. Looking at the third x value, we have negative 2. Negative 2 is not greater than 5, so not the first one. And negative 2 is not less than negative 2, so we won't use the third one. So this time we're going to be using the second equation because negative 2 is equal to negative 2. Plugging in negative 2 as the x, we get negative times negative 2 to the third plus 3. First thing we want to do is times our negative 2 because there is a negative on the outside of the x in the equation, and that will give us positive 2. And then we need positive 2 to the third. We need to work out that. So then we get 8 plus 3, and 8 plus 3 equals 11. And then we plug in 11 and negative 2 as our ordered pair, and we get negative 2, comma 11. Looking at our next x values, we have f of 0. So 0 is not greater than 5. 0 is not less than negative 2, so we're going to be using the second equation again. Negative 2 is less than or equal to 0, and 0 is less than or equal to 5. So 0 does fit into our second equation's inequality. Plugging in 0 as the x, we get negative times 0 to the third plus 3. Since we can't have a negative 0, we times a negative, but still end up with 0 to the third. 0 times itself, however many times it might be, still going to be 0, so we get 0 plus 3. And 0 plus 3 is obviously 3. So then we get 0, 3 as our ordered pair. Looking at our next x value, we get f of 2. 2 is not greater than 5, so not the first one. 2 is not less than negative 2, so for the third time in a row, we're going to be using the second equation. Plugging in negative 2 as the x, we have negative times 2 to the third plus 3. Negative times 2 gives us negative 2 to the third plus 3. Negative 2 to the third is equal to negative 8 plus 3. And negative 8 plus 3 is equal to negative 5. So then we have 2, negative 5 as our final solution. Looking at f of 5 as our x value, 5 is not greater than 5, and 5 is not less than negative 2, so we're going to be using the second equation. Plugging in 5, we get negative times 5 to the third plus 3. Negative times 5 gives us negative 5 to the third plus 3. Negative 5 to the third is equal to negative 125 plus 3. Negative 125 plus 3 is equal to negative 122. Then plugging in both values as our final solution in an ordered pair, we get 5, negative 122. As our last example, we have f of 7.5. 7.5 is not less than negative 2, and 7.5 is not less than or equal to 5. So we're going to be using the first equation this time. Using the first equation and plugging in 7.5 as the x value, we get 3 times 7.5 minus 3. First, 3 times 7.5 is equal to 22.5 minus 3. And then 22.5 minus 3 is equal to 9.5. So as our final x value, we get our final solution of 7.5, 19.5.